The man from the black car entered, shook Marcelo's hand, and explained without hesitation that he represented a transportation company interested in purchasing an entire fleet. 6 trucks at once. Wagner smiled. It was the kind of smile that appeared whenever he could almost smell a large commission walking through the door. The problem was that this negotiation required far more than a smile. Marcelo led the customer into the meeting room reserved for major deals. He opened catalogs and spreadsheets and offered coffee as he tried to impress him. However, financing a commercial fleet was different from selling a pickup truck or a family car. It involved volume discounts, special interest rates, delivery deadlines, and extended warranties for each vehicle. The customer asked about the interest rate for a bulk purchase. Marcelo gave a vague answer and promised to confirm the information with headquarters. When asked about the delivery schedule for all 6 trucks, he gave an answer that sounded more like a guess than reliable information. The man began looking at his watch. On the other side of the showroom, Eliane watched through the meeting room's glass wall but did not interfere. She knew exactly which questions would come next. She had studied that type of financing at night after Theo had gone to sleep, but she had not been invited into the meeting, and entering without permission could make it seem as though she were trying to steal the negotiation. The meeting lasted slightly more than half an hour. The transportation company representative stood up earlier than expected, politely thanked Marcelo, and said that he would consider other options on the market. Any experienced salesperson knew what that sentence truly meant. He shook Marcelo's hand again, this time without the same firmness, and left without looking back. Losing the sale of 6 trucks meant losing almost the entire monthly target. Wagner knew exactly what that meant, especially after the regional director's warning. The dealership ended the week in the red. The following Monday, Wagner gathered the team between the vehicles in the showroom. He tried to sound like a leader but could not hide his desperation. He spoke about commitment, professional conduct, and employees who wasted time with the wrong type of customer, while real opportunities walked out the door. He did not need to mention anyone by name. Everyone looked at Eliane. This happened because this team is poorly organized, he continued, staring directly at her. As long as people waste time with the wrong customers, the salespeople responsible for major negotiations will never get the practice they need. A luxury dealership is not a charity. Eliane felt her face grow hot, but she remained silent. She knew that any response in front of the team would be turned into ammunition against her. She took a deep breath and endured the injustice, just as she had endured so many difficulties since becoming a single mother. Silence filled the showroom. No one defended her or questioned Wagner until Wellington stepped forward. "She's the only person here who treats every customer the same way, Wagner," he said quietly but firmly. "Maybe she isn't the problem." His words hung in the air. Wagner stared at Wellington, surprised by the challenge. The dealership's oldest salesperson never became involved in conflicts. He usually did his job and went home, unsure how to react. Wagner changed the subject to quarterly sales figures and ended the meeting. During the following days, Wellington quietly began sharing the most difficult shifts with Eliane, the weekend hours and the schedules no one else wanted. He asked for nothing in return and never presented it as some grand gesture. Eliane noticed but said nothing. She held on to his kindness as proof that not everything inside that glass showroom had been destroyed. What neither she nor Wagner knew was that losing the transportation company sale was not the end of his problems. It was only the beginning of pressure coming from far above anyone in the dealership. On a Wednesday morning, a couple entered the showroom with dry dirt still clinging to their boots. The man wore an old straw hat, and the woman carried a cloth bag with a repaired strap. They walked slowly through the showroom, studying the vehicles like people carefully calculating every cent. 2 salespeople pretended to be busy. A third did not even look away from his computer. No one approached them. The silence surrounding the couple delivered the same message John had received weeks earlier. Eliane was organizing contracts at a desk in the back when she noticed them. She stood up and walked over. "Good morning. May I help you?" The man introduced himself as Mr. Osmar and explained that he and his wife, Mrs. Irasi, had managed a farm for more than 30 years. They needed to replace their pickup trucks before that year's harvest. They were not looking for free gifts or entertainment. They needed 3 vehicles for heavy work and had saved enough money to complete the purchase. Eliane brought over 2 chairs and began asking the right questions. How would the vehicles be used each day? What type of cargo would they carry? How many miles would they travel each week? Would the couple prefer financing or paying in full? Mrs. Irasi, who was initially suspicious of all the attention, gradually relaxed when she realized that someone was finally listening instead of trying to push the most expensive vehicle in the showroom. The conversation lasted 40 minutes. Eliane explained every detail, compared the models, and remained honest even when that meant recommending a less expensive option that would earn her a smaller commission. At the end, Mr. Osmar looked at his wife. They exchanged the silent nod of a couple who had lived together for decades and no longer needed many words to understand each other. "We'll take all 3 and pay in full," he announced. It was the largest sale the dealership had made during the entire quarter, completed with customers whom most of the sales team had not even bothered to greet. The news spread quickly through the showroom. Christian, who always had a comment ready, remained silent and pretended to study a spreadsheet. Wellington walked past Eliane's desk and simply gave her an approving nod, saying more than any compliment could have expressed. When the regional executives received the weekly report with that result highlighted at the top, Wagner could not hide it. He had to present the sale as a victory for the entire dealership, even though he knew all the credit belonged to the salesperson he had been trying to push aside. For a moment, it seemed as though everything might finally improve. Under different circumstances, a sale of that size would have earned public recognition, praise, and perhaps even a promotion. But what grew inside Wagner was not pride. It was fear. If Eliane continued succeeding in that way, closing major deals with customers he had dismissed, his own position would become vulnerable. Wagner was already under pressure from the executives. Now he had to face the possibility that someone on his team was more capable than he was. Even worse, everyone else was beginning to notice. That evening, Wagner stayed at the dealership after closing and reviewed the customer service records alone. He was not searching for a real mistake. He was searching for a way to rewrite the story before the truth became impossible to erase. The following morning, he called Christian into a private room. "I need you to confirm something if anyone asks," he said, repeatedly glancing toward the door. "Tell them the farmer's sale wasn't legitimate and that Eliane took those customers from another salesperson without following the assignment protocol." Christian hesitated. She knew it was a lie. She had seen the couple enter alone and knew that no salesperson had shown any interest in helping them. However, she also knew how Wagner treated anyone who challenged him. Her fear of becoming his next target was stronger than her conscience at that moment. She quietly nodded without making any promise aloud. Over the following days, Wagner changed a record in the internal system, altering the date and time to suggest that Eliane had taken an appointment assigned to another salesperson. The fraud was not sophisticated, but it could create doubt. For Wagner, doubt would be enough to justify whatever decision he wanted to make. He then scheduled a general meeting for Friday, including the sales team and administrative staff. In the message sent to the dealership's group chat, he said only that they needed to address an urgent matter involving professional conduct. Eliane received the notice at the end of her shift. She did not know exactly what would happen, but the cold tone of the message and the way Wagner avoided looking at her told her that something was being planned. On Friday, the entire team formed a semicircle between the vehicles in the showroom, the same place where John had been humiliated weeks earlier. Eliane arrived on time with a tight feeling in her chest. Christian stood nearby, avoiding eye contact while nervously playing with a pen. Wagner positioned himself in front of the group with a printed document in his hand. "I called everyone here because we need to discuss professional conduct. Unfortunately, this directly involves Eliane." A quiet murmur moved through the group. Eliane felt her face grow hot but maintained her composure. "We have records showing that the farmer's sale did not follow the proper customer assignment protocol. Eliane took the customers from another salesperson without authorization, violating the trust that should exist within this team." "That isn't true," Eliane answered, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "No one approached that couple. I checked before helping them." John walked into the most expensive car dealership in the city, carrying a bucket of fish and a fishing net over his shoulder. The salespeople laughed without even trying to hide it. Only one person did not laugh. Elian crossed the showroom, stopped in front of him, and asked, "Good afternoon, sir. May I help you?" At that moment, the manager Wagner spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "If that fisherman buys a car here, I'll take off my suit and go fishing with him." No one there knew that those words would come back to haunt him at the worst possible moment. If you would have done what Elian did, and helped that elderly fisherman while everyone else laughed, leave a like, because she had no idea what it would cost her to be the only person willing to cross that showroom. John was 63 years old and had the rough hands of a man who had been pulling fishing nets since he was 12. He entered the dealership wearing his usual clothes, worn-out pants, a sun-faded shirt, and a fishing hat stained by years of sweat. He ignored the quiet laughter, or pretended not to notice it, because he had learned decades earlier that people who mock worn-out clothes are usually not worth answering. Elian guided him toward one of the pickup trucks displayed near the showroom window. She did not make small talk or ask the rushed questions typical of an impatient salesperson. She simply asked what he needed the vehicle for. She listened carefully as John talked about his fishing equipment, his father's boat stored in an old garage, and his routine of going out to sea before sunrise. She explained the financing options, showed him the cargo space, and patiently answered every question. She treated him exactly as she would have treated anyone else who walked through those doors, whether they were wearing an expensive suit or a pair of worn-out boots. John asked about fuel consumption and warranty coverage, but eventually shook his head. "I'll think about it," he said, without offering any further explanation. Elian did not pressure him. She thanked him for visiting, handed him a card with the dealership's phone number, and told him she would be available if he decided to return. There was no forced smile and no desperate attempt to make a sale at any cost. What she did not notice was that, as John approached the exit, he pulled a small, worn notebook from his pocket, the same one he had carried since he was young, and wrote her name in it with his crooked handwriting. He did not write down the model of the truck or its price. He recorded only the name of the one person who had looked at him like a human being that afternoon. The glass doors closed behind him, and the showroom returned to its usual activity as though nothing had happened. But something had happened. Wagner, who had been watching from a distance, quickly crossed the showroom and ordered Elian to follow him into the back office. She knew what was coming. It was not the first time he had made a point of showing everyone who was in charge, especially when a potential sale slipped through the dealership's fingers. The office was small and windowless, with a desk covered in contracts and a chair that creaked. Wagner slammed the door harder than necessary. "Do you realize how much time you wasted with that man? Almost 40 minutes. 40 minutes you could have spent with people who actually buy cars." He asked serious questions, Wagner. He didn't seem like just another customer. That's exactly what he was. Just another customer. "Do you honestly think someone like him can afford a pickup truck worth 180,000 Rs? You wasted your time with an old man in dirty boots while real customers could have walked through those doors and received no attention?" Elian felt her stomach tighten, but kept her voice steady. No one else entered during those 40 minutes. "I checked." Wagner did not respond directly. He turned around, picked up a spreadsheet from the desk, and pretended to study numbers he probably already knew by heart. His silence was worse than shouting. It was the silence of someone who had already made a decision before entering the room. "There will be consequences," he said without looking at her. "You'll see before the end of this month." Elian wanted to ask what those consequences would be, but she knew Wagner well enough to understand that insisting would only make things worse. She was raising her 7-year-old son Theo on her own, and every month mattered. Every cent of her commission mattered. She swallowed her response, said only, "All right," and left the office before her voice could break. In the showroom, her co-workers pretended to work, even though they had heard part of the conversation through the thin door. No one said anything. Only Christiane let out a quiet laugh as Elian passed, the kind of laugh that needs no words to hurt. The day continued. Elian helped 2 more customers, scheduled a financing consultation for a couple who planned to return the following week, and organized the paperwork for a pending contract. She did everything with her usual care because she did not know how to work any other way. She did not flatter wealthy customers or put less effort into helping people of modest means. She had worked like that for 2 years, and it had never caused problems, at least not until that day. At the end of her shift, the finance manager stopped her before she left and handed her a printed document. Eliane saw her name, the current month, and a commission amount that had been reduced without any reasonable explanation, considering the sales she had completed. "Your commission has been cut by 20%, the embarrassed man explained. "Wagner's orders. He claimed your productivity had fallen." Eliane stared at the paper for several seconds. 20% was not merely a number on a spreadsheet. It meant being late with the rent, buying less food, and having Theo ask why she was so quiet during dinner. She folded the paper, placed it in her bag, and left the dealership without saying goodbye. Across town, without her knowing it, John was placing his worn notebook inside a drawer near his front door, alongside the things he never wanted to forget. The commission cut was only the beginning. Over the next few days, whenever Eliane was nearby, Christiane began making loud comments about how certain people could not recognize a valuable customer. Even when life tried to teach them, she never spoke directly to Eliane. Instead, she addressed the entire showroom, leaving her words hanging in the air like smoke. Eliane did not respond. She had learned early in life that arguing with someone who only wanted to provoke her would simply feed the spectacle. She continued arriving on time, organizing her appointments, and carefully reviewing every contract before a customer signed it. She did not work that way because she expected recognition. She simply did not know how to work any other way. At home, life offered no rest. Theo was 7 years old and had the energy of a child who wanted to share every detail of his day the moment his mother walked through the door. Eliane listened while preparing dinner, helped him with his homework, and only after he had fallen asleep did she sit at the kitchen table with a pen and notebook. She did not sit there to complain. She studied financing plans, interest rates, and the differences between the dealership's pickup truck models. No one had asked her to do it. She studied because she knew that knowledge was the one thing Wagner could never remove from her paycheck. At the dealership, Wagner introduced a new routine without officially announcing it. He began distributing incoming customers differently, assigning those who appeared wealthy to the salespeople he trusted. Eliane was left with families searching for affordable cars, retired people worried about monthly payments, and customers who only wanted to compare prices. "Good customers deserve good salespeople," Wagner often said, without noticing the irony in his own words. Wellington, the dealership's most experienced salesperson, observed everything in silence. He had worked there since before Wagner became manager and had already watched several bosses arrive and leave while delivering the same speeches. One afternoon, as he organized forms at a desk near Eliane's, he quietly said, "You treat everyone the same way. That's rare around here." Eliane shrugged, unsure of how to respond, but she remembered his words. It was not because she needed praise. It was because, for the first time since the day she helped John, someone inside that showroom seemed to understand what she was doing without twisting her intentions. The tension gradually increased. Wagner became more nervous than usual and demanded results with an urgency that did not match that stage of the month. During a short Monday morning meeting, he revealed that the regional director was closely monitoring the dealership's performance. "When the target isn't reached, it becomes the manager's problem, not just the sales team's," he said. No one asked any questions, but his words continued to echo throughout the showroom. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, a large black car stopped in front of the dealership. A man in a well-tailored suit stepped out and studied the glass building with the confidence of someone who had already decided. "The system says otherwise," Wagner replied, raising the document as though a sheet of paper carried more weight than every living witness in the room. He then turned toward Christiane. "Can you confirm what we discussed?" Everyone looked at her. Christiane opened her mouth but remained silent for several seconds. She knew the truth, yet she could not gather the courage to confront Wagner. "I'm not sure about the exact time," she finally said. It was a vague statement. She did not confirm the lie, but she also failed to deny it. Wagner used her hesitation as though it were proof. "Given the circumstances, I am terminating Eliane's employment for fraudulent conduct involving a customer. I want the official record to reflect that." The entire showroom seemed to stop breathing. For a moment, Eliane felt the ground disappear beneath her feet, but she did not show it. She searched for Wellington with her eyes. He stood at the back of the group, his face tense and his hands clenched. He stepped forward, but Wagner interrupted him before he could speak. "The decision has already been made, Wellington. This is not the time for a discussion." Wellington stopped. He knew that any confrontation could place his own job at risk. Eliane did not cry, shout, or beg for another chance. She walked to her desk and collected her few personal belongings: a pen, a notepad, and a small photograph of Theo attached to the side of her monitor. She carefully placed everything inside her bag and walked past her coworkers without saying a word. She refused to give Wagner the satisfaction of seeing a reaction he could later use as evidence of emotional instability. Her silence carried more weight than any scream. The glass doors closed behind her for the last time, but Wagner was still not satisfied. Afraid that the truth might eventually come out, he began quietly calling other dealerships in the city. He casually mentioned that a former employee had been dismissed for falsifying customer service records. He never offered too many details, only enough to create suspicion among anyone considering hiring her. During the following days, Christiane avoided looking at her coworkers. She knew that her silence had contributed to the injustice. She discovered that the weight of saying nothing could hurt almost as much as openly confirming a lie. Eliane updated her resume that same evening, sitting at the kitchen table where she had studied financing plans for so many weeks. She sent it to one dealership and received a polite message 3 days later, saying that the position had already been filled. She did not think much of it. Jobs could be filled quickly. She sent her resume to a second company and then a third. The responses were always similar, polite, distant, and without any real explanation. She began to notice a pattern but had no way to prove it. Then, on a Sunday afternoon, a friend who had worked at a competing dealership for years called her. "Eliane, I need to tell you something, but this has to stay between us." Her friend explained that the dealership's manager had received a call from Wagner. He had warned him about a former employee who was applying for jobs around the city and mentioned an alleged case of customer record fraud. Eliane felt her entire body. Christiane, ashamed that she had failed to expose Wagner's lie, apologized during a private conversation. Eliane accepted her apology without humiliating her. Christiane remained with the team and became one of the salespeople most committed to the dealership's new way of treating customers. Vicente continued repairing boat and car engines and remained John's friend without expecting any reward. Mr. Osmar and Mrs. Irasi returned months later to purchase another pickup truck and asked to be helped by the same salesperson as before. Completely unaware of everything that had happened behind the scenes, John returned to the simple life he had always preferred. Early on Saturday mornings, he still took his father's boat out to sea. Attached to the dashboard with tape was a crumpled note written by his father: "Judge people by the size of their hearts." Months later, during an ordinary afternoon at the dealership, Eliane asked why he had trusted her after knowing her for such a short time. John thought for a few seconds before answering. "Because in that showroom full of people staring at my boots, you were the only one who looked at me." In the end, Eliane did not succeed because she was lucky enough to help a powerful man. She succeeded because she treated someone with respect without expecting anything in return. John remained the same man with a fishing hat, worn-out boots, and hands marked by the sea. The only difference was that everyone finally discovered the value hidden behind his appearance. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson in this story. Character is what we reveal when we believe no one important is watching. If you also believe that respect should never depend on someone's clothes, money, or appearance, leave a like and tell us in the comments. If you had been in Eliane's place, would you have crossed that showroom to help John?